Hello, Assalamu alaikum, Sat Sri Akal, Namaste. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Farheen Khan, and you're watching the Azeeza Show. This week, we're talking about municipal politics. We all have thoughts, about what's happening in our communities and the challenges that we're facing. And often there's questions about what's the value of voting in municipal elections. And so, with me today, we have Kalsang Dolma and Alan Khan. So thank you for being here. I want to just take this opportunity to kind of just jump right into it. I know you both have very different sort of roles in this space. So maybe we can start with just you guys introducing yourselves first. Do you want to start?
Oh, I'm Kalsang Dolma. I'm running for Toronto City Council for Parkdale High Park.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. That's great. And Alan?
Well, my name is Alan Khan. I'm a local political writer in Mississauga. I write for an online media company called InSaga. We have the largest digital reach in the Western GTA, and I'm really focused on the municipal elections that are coming up this fall.
That's great. So, I know that often, like I was saying earlier, that there's always a challenge because people wonder, is there any value really in, actually voting for municipal politics? Why don't we talk about, what are the issues that people, what are the issues, what are the sort of top issues that you think are facing people in the community today, and why do you think it's of value to vote?
Yeah, I think it is very important to vote in any level of government, any election. And actually, I was talking to one of the residents when I was canvassing, and he actually said that municipal election is the most important one to vote for because it directly affects our lives, right?
Absolutely.
So that, having said that, so the top 5 issues that affect us in the city, I think are number 1, equitable and affordable housing. Number 2 is public transit.
Right.
Number 3 is health and climate change policies.
Right.
And number 4, I would say sustainable economic growth. And number 5 is youth and artists.
Okay, excellent. What do you think, Alan?
Well, yes, definitely municipal politics, I think, is the most probably important level of government that we have in Canada, because if you think about it, a lot of the everyday issues you encounter as a resident, that it's the municipal government's job to take care of those, whether it's shoveling your driveway from the snow or garbage pickup or water, water systems. These are really bread and butter issues that people rely on, and they say that if the federal government shut down, you probably notice in about a month. Provincial, you probably notice in about a week. If the city government shuts down, you notice right away, because then your services are all cut off, and nobody's doing anything. Your garbage not getting picked up. In Mississauga, I think what Kalsang touched on is very similar, actually. I mean, we're in the GTA, so a lot of municipalities, not just in Toronto but the surrounding area, are dealing with issues like transit gridlock. Mississauga is the 6th largest city in Canada.
For sure.
We're having more people commuting from Toronto to work here than we have them commuting out to Toronto to work, and so the gridlock has always been there. It's been there for a very long time, and the affordable housing piece is becoming more important now as population increases, and that we're having a challenge with affordable housing because we're just having all these people come in, and they're building more high rises, but still rents are becoming very high.
Ridiculous.
It's becoming unaffordable to a point, and that issue needs to be resolved before it just becomes impossible for people to rent a home or even buy a home, right? And I think some other issues pertaining to, I guess, education, I think, is also important. I mean, you have a lot of people running for school trustee as well.
Yeah, exactly.
We have a lot of changes that came with the sex ed curriculum being revised again, and there's also talk of there was I think the Ford government recently announced $100 million of school repairs were being delayed.
Yes.
So we have questions whether how education should be funded, in the long term. What exactly is the province doing, and
For sure.
The role of trustees, I think, has to be addressed as to exactly how important they are in the coming years.
Absolutely.
Right.
What do you think, Kalsang, in terms of Toronto? Like, how does it, what are some of the issues that we're dealing with, and how is this, recent announcement with this Bill 5 sort of affected
Right.
Toronto?
So I mean, I pointed those 5 very important issues, and you're right in terms of the school and education funding, because school, although we have separate trustees to look at the school affairs, but it is also city affair,
Right.
In terms of how much funding or infrastructure, if TDSP, the school boards have enough funding, right? And with the provincial government recently cutting out of the 100 million, I heard that it's 25 million actually was assigned for Toronto school repair funds.
Okay,
so that has been now put on hold or erased, right?
Right.
So in terms of, all these important issues are the one that we should be discussing right now in the election.
That's right.
And just in July, when the federal local government, before it became legislation, when the premier announced that he's going to cut 47 or 45 to 25 councillors. It's pretty much cut in half, right? So I think that announcement and that change affected our city negatively already, because number one, it is an attack on our democracy, because this announcement was without consultation to the elected council, as well as to the mayor and to the people of Toronto at large. There was no consultation, no process used in making that decision. So it was a direct order from the provincial government.
Yeah, exactly.
And so because of that, I think there is an important issue also. Already we have an issue of representation and inclusion at City Hall level.
Absolutely.
For a city that is one of the top 10 global cities in the world, and a city that is largest in Canada, we say our city's motto is diversity, our strength.
Yes.
And if you look at City Hall, we only have 25 out of 45 councillors. We have less than a quarter female councillors, women councillors, and out of which only one racialized woman elected.
Yes.
So there already is a representation problem, and with that council cut now, there is a very strong possibility, risk that we may not even have one racialized woman elected, right? So the representation will be a huge issue, and civic engagement is a huge issue. Already half the people of Toronto electorate do not come out and vote. So now with this, when you are cut in half, there are less people now are going to have their voice at City Hall. So it's a big issue.
I have a question, actually. Something else that kind of comes to mind. You're absolutely right. One of the things is, because you're right, there's a lot of voters who are just going to, sort of decide not to vote at all, right? There's going to be voter apathy and stuff like that. So how do we change that? How do we get people to care again?
Yeah. Can I? Yeah. So I think one of my candidacy is when I'm a new candidate, right? So when I go door to door and talk to residents of Parkdale High Park, people always ask, how are you different, or how would you do things differently than the incumbent, right? And of course there are many answers to that, but one of my important answer to that is that we need to engage with the in a smaller riding, Ward 14, for instance, Parkdale High Park, the old Ward 14. We had 55,000 electorate, out of which only slightly less than 25,000 actually voted. That means 35,000 are not engaged. And why is it, right? Of course, when you look at the statistics, it's usually the young people, youth, and immigrants, and low income. Right? Those are the 3 important groups that do not come out and vote.
And they should, because so much of it affects them
exactly.
directly.
So, and one of the reason of course, there are many factors that play into that. One of the important reasons is they are not feeling included. They don't feel engaged. They don't see their issues addressed by the people on the ballot, people who are running.
Yes,
so
exactly.
I think we are given very little choices, and we are always seeing the same people getting elected, the same people coming out to vote, and those 35,000 or those larger percentage of us are feeling disengaged, right? There is voter apathy, but there is like truly area of improvement in our democracy, where we need to make sure that we are supporting independent candidates like myself and candidates like many others who are equally capable to do the job, but we are not usually given that opportunity to shine, right? So it's very important that we need better choices, and we need more different sorts of candidates being taken seriously, and then more and more people will be interested, get more excited, feel more included, and have a good reason to come out and vote.
When they see themselves, being represented.
Yes,
Absolutely.
so exactly.
Yeah, and she's right on the various aspects. And I guess speaking from the media's perspective, in Peel Region, for example, I know Toronto doesn't have a problem. You have a lot of the 4 national newspapers and a lot of local radio and TV stations. But I think sometimes those stations, they mostly cover like the big races, like the mayoral races, and they don't focus a lot on individual council races. In Peel Region, we have an issue where there is very little media presence, and so personally, I try to do as best as I can and write stories that are prevalent about municipal politics and government, so people are at least informed, whether they are interested in what I'm writing or not. That's not what drives me. With respect to Bill 5, I think it's important to note that the other aspect is that the Ford government canceled elections for regional chairs across Ontario. So specifically in Peel Region, the election for the chair was canceled, and I think that was primarily done because the former PC leader, Patrick Brown, was running for that position, and Ford, for whatever reason, decided to cancel that to stop Mr. Brown.
He's going to run for mayor now, right?
Yeah, he's running for mayor of Brampton now.
Right.
I think that cancellation of the election, it's a lost opportunity, because it would have been an opportunity to educate the public on what exactly the regional chair is. Exactly. The regional chair in Peel is actually modeled after the old structure of Metropolitan Toronto, where the 5 former municipalities in Metro Toronto, Old Toronto, Etobicoke, Scarborough, there was a chair of Metro Toronto, and so that model was kind of exported out across the GTA, so that's what Peel Region has.
If we can actually take a quick break, we'll
Okay.
come back and continue that conversation.
Sure.
We'll be back in just a minute. Hi everyone, welcome back. You're watching the Azeeza Show, and we were just having a discussion on the issue of municipal politics. So Alan, you were gonna just give us a quick, we were just talking about Bill 5, so please tell us in terms of how that affects Peel.
So just to recap, Bill 5 is a piece of legislation the Ford government recently passed that does 2 things, mainly. One is to cut the size of Toronto City Council in half from the proposed 47 wards to now 25 wards that are supposed to match the provincial ridings. The other aspect is cancellation of certain elections for regional chair across Ontario, so in specifically Peel Region. Before this election, the regional chair was an appointed position. The other councillors around regional council were supposed to select someone to fill that spot. It doesn't necessarily have to be a sitting councillor, it could be anyone technically. So the Wynne government decided that they should be selected by an election. So they passed a bill from the floor to put in an election in place. So you had people like former PC leader Patrick Brown, among other people, running for this position, which is supposed to represent about 1.5 million people in a region, handling a $3 billion budget. So I think the cancellation was a lost opportunity for people to be educated about what a regional chair does and how it affects their lives, because this is, I think, a very important position. That being said, I think there is some positives in the cancellation to give a pause, because having a fourth elected person across basically citywide, you have Peel region is different because you have the sixth and the ninth largest city in Canada, Brampton and Mississauga, and coupled with a smaller municipality like Caledon, which only has about 60,000 people. So the dynamics are different, and if you want to add another person in there, basically a fourth super mayor, that basically can claim that he or she has an elected mandate as well. I think the dynamics would have been different. Regional chair is traditionally supposed to be sort of a consensus builder, someone who just chairs the meetings and make sure that everybody can come to a consensus at the end. And another thing is, I think Ford did that because he knew that former Mississauga Mayor Hazel McCallion, who supported him in the provincial election, this was probably the quid pro quo. You don't touch Mississauga. I'll support you in the election. And this might open the door for Ford to think about perhaps reforming Peel region government itself. Mississauga for years has been beating a drum of separating from Peel or just becoming a sort of a single-tier municipality, and I think this opens the door for that.
Well, I want to just take a moment to introduce our guest here, Samiya, Abdi. Thank you for being here. So, Samiya, we were, speaking about Bill 5, and we've also talked a little bit about some of the issues that affect our communities, one of which being education. So I know you're running for school board trustee. Maybe you can give us a bit of a background of who you are and what you're doing.
Sure. My name is Samiya Abdi. I am a mother, a consultant, and a community mobilizer. Education has been something that has been close to my heart for a very long time. I've been doing community building for the past 16 years, and particularly working with youth around mentorship and education excellence. So running for a TDSP position as a trustee is a natural progression to the work that I've been doing in community, and a continuation of that path that I've chosen many, many years ago, starting with myself being a teen and just wanting to work with people, especially around their challenges that they might be having around the education system. So running for Ward 19 in Scarborough, and really excited about the changes that we might be able to bring up for better schools in the Toronto District School Board.
Wonderful. And how do you feel Bill 5 has affected your race?
Exactly. So as a Toronto resident and as well as a candidate for this coming election, it has been a challenge to have a campaign strategy and to have clearly understand what your boundaries are and what's your target area, and then for that to change. It's not so much, my issue is not so much whether we have 47 or 25 councillors. It's the fact that there was no consultations done with the residents of the city of Toronto. So anytime a government decides to flip the coin and change the narrative, we beg to ask the question of who benefits and who is at disadvantage.
Yes, absolutely, for sure. Oh, that's great. So in terms of some of the other issues, do you want to talk maybe about some of the issues that you are sort of interested in terms of the work that you're doing?
Absolutely. So some of the challenges that particularly schools around the Toronto region, especially around the TTSP, have is around disrepair. So a lot of our schools are in a great status of disrepair, whether it's mold or lack of heating in the winter, so having drafty classrooms, and in the summer lack of ventilation. So our students dealing with heat stroke and not being able to breathe at times, having disrepair when it comes to stairs, when it comes to playgrounds. So really safety concerns for our students, as well as the children in these spaces, as well as the adults who are either working or supporting the school system. So going to work every day, or going to a space that's supposed to be open and inviting and safe environment, and instead having to face a situation that is really not conducive to learning, and that affects the health and safety of everybody who's in that space. So, so that is one of the biggest issues that I'm focusing on this platform, my platform. Another one is around curriculum design and the fact that we have, you know, decisions around curriculum design happen somewhere in Queen's Park behind closed doors without consultations with communities, parents, and taking into consideration the lived experiences of the students and how are we able to prepare them for the future and protect them. So really focusing on an opportunity to advocate for inclusive design that takes into account the voices of communities, takes into account the voices of students and parents, as well as educators and researchers and scientists who can put evidence-based decision-making on the table.
For sure, right.
Just to address your point about how there seems to be a lack of consultation in education policy, it seems to be coming top-down from the province. I think that just speaks to a fundamental issue with how education is managed in the province. I mean, education is a provincial file, first of all. So, but that doesn't mean that province should, you know, dictate from the top down how all the schools across the province should, you know, what kind of curriculum they should be dealing with. You know, I think, I mean, when I was going to high school, like, there were very little courses on teaching financial literacy or just how to, like, you know, entrepreneurship, for example. Like, these are really solid life skills that students should be learning. And, you know, nothing wrong with having a liberal arts degree, but still, you know, having something like that, that is, well, you probably have to mandate that, but I'm not saying that the province should mandate it. Like, each school should decide if they should have something like that. And I think that's just one of the challenges of running as a trustee. A lot of people I talk to, they ask me, what exactly does a trustee do again? So, you know, you have to take the time to explain to people what exactly you're running for before you ask them to vote for you.
Yes.
Because I see your point. Because I've worked with high school students as youth program manager and also leading a number of youth-led projects. That's mostly after-school projects. I know how the school system works, and also as a settlement worker, I advise youth when they can't reach to a counselor because there are shortage of counselors in school, right? In a 600 student school, I know for a fact that there were only 2 counselors. So a lot of the newcomer students, a lot of the immigrant students, a lot of the marginalized youth, they need advising, and they can't even get an advice on their career goals or subject choices. So that's another issue. And the other issue I just remembered was about how there is no autonomy for the TDSP in curriculum design, for instance, for a city as large as Toronto or Mississauga, right? You have to rely on provincial Ministry of Education to come down with directives. So I think also when I was doing engagement with my residents, many of them actually talked about education. Although city councillors would not be directly having that power or that you know, decision-making you know, priorities, but a lot of them are asking about the subjects, right, in school. Who decides what subjects are provided, and also our students should be learning about income taxes or financial management and literacy, and also carpentry and construction, home building, because houses these days are so expensive. But if young people knew how to fix small, you know, plumbing, or those could be like general subjects or optional subjects. Exactly, and people will not have to go to college and pay more money just to get those basic education. Those subjects could be provided in schools as part of the free, you know, high school education.
So I wanted to also just add to one more thing that you brought up around the availability of social services in school, especially around mental health support. And speaking to a lot of young people, knowing the current stressors that young people are around, the rate of depression, the rate of you know, anxiety, the lack of sleep because of both societal pressures and actually academic pressures on
Right.
young people, and again, young people not having places to go to, or the support that they need in school,
Right.
and thinking about mental health and well-being, thinking about also a lot of the cuts around the physical activity programs that happen, and how for us to be able to, we're not sending our children to school just to be seated in a classroom
Right.
and learn to read and write, and not work their brain, and not be full humans with good experiences and with emotional and mental well-being at the center of that
Right.
conversation. So thinking about that as well. So school is where they're spending actually probably more time than they're at
Right.
home. So making sure that they're having these positive experiences and definitely learning life skills,
Right.
not only things that are just that will get you the next job, but will make sure that you're living like fulsome life.
Right.
So I want to ask a question actually to all of you, really. Like, I guess the best way to describe it is like, why do you care about this issue? Why is it, why are you running for
Right.
the two candidates? Ellen, why do you write about these things? Why should people care? I think that's the real sort of piece that I want to get at. Feel free,
Yeah.
whoever wants to jump in.
Well, okay, so I'm not a candidate, but I guess I could speak it from
As a
perspective,
writer,
or
yeah.
as a citizen, as a resident,
Sure.
as a voter, why people should care about these things. I think in our society today, with social media and how everybody is by that medium gets a little more insular. They are more caring towards just themselves and perhaps just their immediate family. They're curious about how my life is going to go every day, right?
Right.
Try to think about these bigger issues are like important and more long term. I think they should care about it because it impacts their society as a whole, and especially for they should be caring about these things because down the road, whether they decide to have children or not, and who have kids who go into the school system, then they need to see if, like, what kind of policies are being put forward in their education system that's going to affect their children in the future. So.
That's great. We only have a couple of minutes left, but I definitely want to hear from both of you.
Yeah,
Please
so
go ahead.
For me, because all these issues are important, and I've always liked community development and community building. So for all my life in Canada, I've been a community worker and community advocate, right? I've also been on the board of a number of organizations for access to justice, affordable housing,
For sure.
environmental engagement. So I know that when we work in nonprofit, there are we work with government programs. I've worked with all levels of government programs.
Right.
But working in nonprofit community building, you are actually filling all the gaps left by the policies and government policies. So I think being a city council candidate, you actually can make policies that are responsive to the issues on the ground, and that's one of the reasons I'm running.
That's
and
great.
Also for more inclusion and diversity and equity at the decision-making level.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
So education is really the backbone of our society, and investing in our kids means investing in our future. So it's the long-term thing to do to make sure that we have a better education system that serves all kids and closes the achievement gap. Also recognizing that, for example, racialized youth, racialized students, specifically Black and Indigenous youth, are disproportionately expelled, disproportionately suspended in our education system. So challenging some of those issues that are being faced by our communities, but also recognizing the economic value in making sure that we have world-class education system, and that our future workforce is actually a competitive one. So at the end of it, that is really why I care about education, and I see this as a good place to start contributing.
That's wonderful. Well, unfortunately, we're all out of time. I just want to say thank you to all of you for being on the show. To our viewers, like definitely think about, why it's important to vote in the next municipal election, both for City Council and also for School Board Trustees. These are the issues that affect us day to day, and it's so important for us to take that stand. Thanks so much. Take care.